In 1982, $1 bought you 4 Hershey bars. Today, that same dollar gets you less than half of one. You remember 1982. Unemployment hit 10.8%. Factories were cutting shifts, and you were 19 with a single bill in your back pocket trying to make it stretch. That dollar still meant something. Over the next 10 items, we're counting down exactly what it could buy, from the gas pump to the grocery aisle to the drive-through window. We start with a loaf of bread. Number 10 on the list, bread was still the backbone of a working day in 1982. You would walk into Kroger or Fisher Foods and see soft white sandwich loaves stacked in their clear plastic bags, each one sealed with a twist tie that snapped when you opened it. A loaf of white bread cost you about 69 cents in Ohio that spring, right in line with the national average. That single loaf was enough for a week's worth of peanut butter sandwiches, morning toast, or a fried egg sandwich before heading out to the job site. The bread was pillowy and fresh, slices squared off and just thick enough to soak up melted butter. Sometimes you would catch a faint whiff of yeast as you pulled a slice from the middle of the loaf. In 2026, that same loaf runs you roughly $2.84, which means the price has climbed more than fourfold, but the taste and ritual are still burned into your memory. In 1982, $1 bought you a loaf of bread and left change for coffee. That's what $1 meant. Real food on the table, even when times were tight. Number 9. The Hershey bar was a sweet break tucked into your pocket or glove box in 1982. The red and white wrapper had a crisp feel, and when you peeled it back, the silver foil inside made a sharp crackle that stuck in your mind. That 1.55-ounce bar cost you a quarter, or 30 cents if you grabbed the now larger version during the summer promo. You could buy it at the corner store, a Sunoco station, or the candy rack at Fisher Foods. No special trip needed. The chocolate snapped clean when you broke a piece off, and the surface caught the light in a way that made it look almost glossy. Kids would swap them at school, but for you, it was a quick bit of comfort after a long shift or during a Saturday matinee. In 2026, the same Hershey bar runs about $1.70, nearly 7 times what you paid in 1982. Back then, $1 bought you 4 bars and still left change for the soda machine. That kind of value meant you could treat yourself or a friend, even when the paycheck felt tight and every penny mattered. The taste, the foil, the sound, they all bring back the feeling of a simpler reward at the end of a hard day. 8th place goes to Coca-Cola, the classic cold drink that marked every lunch break and ball game in 1982. You would spot those glass bottles lined up in the cooler at Lawson's or the corner gas station, the red label shining through the condensation. A 2-liter bottle sold for 99 cents, which meant a single 12-ounce serving set you back just 17 cents. That left plenty of room in your dollar for a candy bar or a bag of chips. Crack open the bottle and the fizz would pop, sending up that caramel sweet smell that filled the car or the break room. The taste was sharp and sugary, with just enough bite to wake you up after a long morning on the job. Sometimes you would pour it over ice in a tall glass and watch the bubbles race to the top. In 2026, a 12-ounce Coke costs around $1.85, more than 10 times the old price. But in 1982, $1 bought you nearly 6 servings, enough to share with a buddy or keep yourself going through a hot Ohio summer. That is what $1 meant, a cold drink in your hand and the taste of something familiar, even when paychecks were stretched thin. 7th place. A movie ticket in 1982 was still a golden pass to a couple of hours out of the grind. You would walk up to the glass box office at the local theater, maybe the old Lowe's downtown or the multiplex by the mall, and hand over your dollar bills. The ticket itself was a thin strip of cardstock, glossy and perforated, with the film's name stamped in bold black letters and the price printed right in the corner. That year, the average movie ticket ran you about $2.94, so $1 bought you a seat if you caught a matinee with a friend and split the cost, or if you dug up a discount coupon from the Sunday paper. For a full-price show, you would need to scrounge up another couple of quarters, but $1 still got you in the door at plenty of smaller houses or for a weekday special. The theater air was thick with the smell of popcorn and that waxy butter, and the low rumble of the speakers made even the previews feel big. You would tuck that ticket stub in your wallet or shirt pocket, maybe save it as a marker of the night you saw E.T. or Blade Runner on the big screen. In 2026, that same ticket costs about $13.80, which means the price has shot up more than 4 times over. Back in 1982, though, $1 made you feel like you had options, escape and entertainment, and the chance to lose yourself in a story for a while, even when times were tight and every penny counted. 6th place goes to eggs, the quiet staple that anchored a lot of Ohio breakfasts in 1982. You would open the fridge and pull out a cardboard carton stamped with a red Farm Fresh label, the shells still speckled and sometimes carrying a stray feather from the barn. Crack one on the side of the cast iron skillet and you would get that quick snap, then watch the golden yolk fall into a pool of sizzling butter. The smell would fill the kitchen, rich, a little sweet, and unmistakable. A dozen large eggs cost you about 60 cents at Kroger or Fisher Foods, right in line with the national average. That meant $1 bought you the whole carton and left enough change for toast or a cup of coffee. Scrambled, fried, or folded into an omelet, EGS were cheap protein that kept you going through a long workday. In 2026, a dozen eggs runs about $2.70, which is more than 4 times the price you paid in 1982. But back then, even when paychecks were thin and the economy was on the ropes, $1 still covered the basics for breakfast. The sound of eggs hitting the pan, the warmth in the kitchen, the sight of that carton in the fridge, those moments stick with you. That is what $1 meant. A real meal to start the day, even when times were hard. Number 5. Milk, the everyday staple that shaped breakfast tables across Ohio in 1982. You would find it sitting in the fridge in a glass bottle or a plastic jug, capped in red or blue, with a thin ring of cream floating on top if you bought the whole kind. The price tag read $2.09 a gallon at Fisher Foods, just a touch higher than the national average that year. Pouring it over a bowl of cornflakes, you would catch a faint sweet smell and watch the white swirl settle in the cereal. A gallon lasted a family through the week, enough for morning coffee, a glass at dinner, and the odd late-night cookie dunk. The jug itself was heavy and cold, sometimes sweating in your hand if you grabbed it straight from the back of the cooler. In 2026, that same gallon runs you roughly $11.20, a jump that is hard to wrap your head around. Back in 1982, $1 bought you a little less than half a gallon, but that was still enough to cover cereal for a few mornings or a round of chocolate milk after school. When money was tight, milk was one of those things you just bought anyway. The sound of the cap popping, the chill of the bottle, the way it poured slow and steady, those details stick with you. That is what $1 meant, a piece of normal life, even when the rest of the world felt uncertain. 4th place goes to the McDonald's hamburger, a working man's lunch that fit right into a tight 1982 budget. You would swing by the drive-thru on Euclid Avenue or drop into the counter on East 73rd after a long morning, and for just 40 cents, you could unwrap a hot, seasoned patty tucked between a soft sesame seed bun. The paper wrapper had that familiar golden arches stamped across it, and when you tore it open, the steam carried a mix of beef, ketchup, and pickles that hit you right in the gut. Simple, filling, and just enough to keep you going. The patty itself was not thick, but it sizzled on the grill and left a little grease mark on the wrapper, proof you had gotten the real thing. Pair it with a small fry or a Coke, and you still stayed under $1, which mattered when every paycheck had to stretch. In 2026, that same burger costs about $1.80, more than 4 times the price, and the meal deal is a memory. But in 1982, $1 at McDonald's meant a hot lunch, a quick break with your crew, and a taste that stuck with you through the afternoon. That is what $1 meant. A hot burger in your hands, even when the work was hard and the money was tight. Third place goes to cigarettes, a fixture in the pocket of a working man in 1982. You'd buy a pack of Marlboro or Newport at the corner store or gas station, maybe right after a shift, maybe during a break on the job site when the day felt long and the air was thick with sawdust and sweat. $1 bill got you a full pack, 20 smokes wrapped in a red striped box, the cellophane tight and the paper matchbook sometimes tucked under the flap. Crack the seal and you'd catch that first sharp scent of tobacco, a little sweet, a little bitter, and instantly familiar. Lighting up, the tip flared orange and the first draw filled your lungs with a taste that hung in the air, mixing with the smell of coffee or the faint tang of gasoline from the trucks parked outside. In those days, nobody blinked if you lit up right there on the site or in the break room. $1 for a pack meant you could share a smoke with a buddy, pass the time, or just take the edge off after a rough morning. By 2026, that same pack runs you about $6.90, almost 7 times as much, and you are lucky if you find a spot where you can use it. But in 1982, $1 was not just pocket change. It was a ritual, a moment to breathe, and a taste of normalcy in a year when everything else felt uncertain. That is what $1 meant. A break when you needed it, and the comfort of something you knew. Number 17, meatloaf with tomato glaze and green beans. In second place, ground beef was the anchor of a weeknight dinner in 1982. You would walk into Fisher Foods or Kroger and see those deep red 1-pound packs lined up in the cooler, each one wrapped tight in plastic with a little foam tray underneath. The price tag read 96 cents a pound, right on the nose. That was enough for a pan of burgers, a skillet of sloppy joes, or a meatloaf that could stretch through 2 meals if you added enough breadcrumbs. The beef would sizzle and brown in the skillet, sending up that rich, meaty smell that filled the kitchen and called everyone to the table. You would press it with a spatula and watch the fat bubble around the edges, knowing you would get a good crust if you left it alone. In 2026, that same pound runs about $4.70, nearly 5 times the old price, and you feel it every time you go through the checkout. But in 1982, $1 got you a full pound with a little change left over, enough for a hearty meal or a backyard cookout if you grabbed a few packs. That is what $1 meant. Real food you could turn into supper, a smell in the kitchen that said home, and a meal that stuck to your ribs after a long day. When money was tight and the work was hard, you could still count on ground beef to pull a meal together. And finally, in first place, gasoline was the heartbeat of every week in 1982. Pulling into a Marathon or Gulf station off Interstate 71, you would watch the bright red numbers on the pump click up as you filled your Chevy Cavalier or Ford Escort. Regular unleaded ran you about $1.17 a gallon nationwide, with Ohio sitting right in that same range. For $1, you could squeeze in just under a full gallon, enough to get you 30 miles down the road in those fuel-stingy compacts. The handle was cold and a little greasy, and as the fuel hissed into the tank, the air filled with that sharp smell of petroleum that stuck to your hands and clothes. The old mechanical pumps made a soft tick, and the numbers spun like a slot machine, promising another week of commutes, job site runs, or a Saturday drive to the hardware store. In 2026, a gallon runs about $4.45, nearly 4 times what you paid back then, and $1 barely covers a quarter of a tank. But in 1982, a single bill still bought you a real stretch of freedom, enough to get to work, see friends, or just roll the windows down and chase the sun across Ohio. That is what $1 meant. The open road, the promise of movement, and the feeling that you could get where you needed to go, even when the world felt tight. What did you spend yours on in 1982? If you remember that $1, tell me what you spent yours on. Leave it in the comments.